In 1981, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg collaborated on Raiders of the Lost Ark. The film would harken back to the adventure serials of the 1930s. After Thomas Elliott couldn't play the part, Harrison Ford stepped in. Indiana Jones would immediately cement his iconic status in Raiders with mind-blowing stunts, a fast-moving story, and tongue-in-cheek humor. He went on 3 big-screen adventures, and they became one of the most popular film series in cinema history. Fans have argued the ranking of the best to worst in the series since. They have their personal qualms with certain things.
You call him Dr. Jones, dog.
But all agree that Indiana Jones is a kick-ass character and they would gladly watch him continue his adventures. Since Indy's Last Crusade in 1989, there had been rumors and speculation surrounding a 4th Indy film. None of them seemed to pan out, and fans would just have to watch the adventures of young Indiana Jones on TV to get their fix. At least Harrison did a cameo in one episode. It didn't seem possible the big 3, Spielberg, Lucas, and Ford, would ever come to an agreement on what adventure they could take Indy on next. While the world kept hope alive, Harrison went off to make some good and bad movies. Spielberg went off to win some Oscars, and Lucas decided to piss off his Star Wars fans. Finally, after 19 years, word came out that a 4th Indiana Jones adventure was coming. After all that time, they found a story they could agree on, and were getting to work.
Okay, you asked for it!
Expectations need to be kept in check. The odds that the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull could come close to the quality of the previous 3 films were slim at best, so I was only hoping for a few good action scenes. That's pretty much the signature of the series, so I thought if anything it would deliver on that. I was still disappointed. I think the question devoted Indy fans will be asking themselves for a long time will be, what happened? The main concern, or at least the most discussed one when the movie was announced, was Harrison Ford's age. Would he look believable cracking the whip and punching bad guys? The jokes of naming it Indiana Jones and the Rest Home were popular, but Ford's age is the least of the film's problems. Sure, he does look older, but he slips back into the hat without missing a beat, and resurrects Dr. Jones after all this time. He deserved a better adventure to be sent on. Putting aside how the story doesn't seem like an Indiana Jones one, it's pretty ludicrous and boring anyway. All this business of the Crystal Skull belonging to an alien race might have worked, but there's really no mystery or excitement to any of it. Indy and us feel like we're just moving along from one random scene to another. Indy isn't really given anything to do in the film. Once John Hurt is introduced, he mumbles obvious clues that will lead Indy into the next scene. His character seems to be there solely for a simple way to move Indy from place to place. The characters are all one-dimensional, with no real weight to them. Shia LaBeouf is introduced as Mutt Williams, a 50s greaser from the mold of Marlon Brando. I think as soon as it was announced he was in the cast, everyone immediately thought, hey, he's probably playing Indy's son. So there's no real surprise when that big revelation comes. I understand the setting change has been moved to the 1950s, but Shia never feels like any more than just a young actor playing dress-up. I never once believed his character. Most of his macho antics come off laughable, like when Cate Blanchett is about to cut his throat, he tells her to wait and coolly runs a comb through his hair. As for his prowess with the switchblade, his expert ability to fence, and his Tarzan skills, I didn't buy any of that either.
Very funny!
Karen Allen returns to the role of Marion Ravenwood after nearly 30 years. It's a real shame they didn't give her anything to do. Remember in Raiders when she first sees Indy after several years and how memorable that reunion was?
I need one of the pieces your father collected.
It was nothing like that the second time around. It basically dissolves into silly sitcom banter. Cate Blanchett plays the main villain, and really the only villain. There aren't any memorable, menacing sidekicks our heroes have to face off against. There's not a moment when I felt they were in any genuine danger from these communists. Indy's friend Mac, who we know nothing about, repeatedly goes back and forth and betraying Indy and apologizing. Towards the end of the film, Indy has got this Scooby gang of sidekicks tagging along behind him. At one point I thought he was finally going to lose them when he says, I'm going on alone, but they all come along anyway.
Wow, holy smoke! Crash landing!
So how about the action? That's what will save this film, right? The first warehouse scene isn't bad. Seeing Indy swing from lights is kind of fun. From then on, the action is subpar, boring, uninventive, and marred by CGI effects. The one motorcycle chase on the college campus feels like it's the only action that was done for real, but for me it fell out of place. This is just me, but I think of Indy as a dual character occupying 2 separate worlds, a boring archaeology professor and a globe-trotting adventurer. Having the action take place on his college campus seemed wrong. The most excitement Indy should have on that campus are female students flirting with him. The cutesy jokes by the students didn't help sell me the idea either.
Not very funny.
The rest of the action was basically badly done CGI that made the unbelievable even more unbelievable. The jungle chase, which I imagine was supposed to be the highlight, was pretty miserable to watch. Spielberg had said he was going to shoot this film with practical special effects, similar to the way the original trilogy was shot, and would keep the CGI to a minimum. Well, the long, boring exposition scenes didn't have much CGI in them, at least. There are certain scenes that became notorious and talked about as soon as audiences saw them, but I'll skip all those and only say, yeah, they all bothered me too. I think they missed an ideal opportunity with the opening of the film. They could have used a teaser intro that would have caught us up on like what Indy's been up to after all this time. What's his life been like? Does he regret not having a family of his own? Why would he have worked with the government after the way they treated him at the end of Raiders? Give us some kind of background about his friend Mac, so when he betrays Indy, we'd feel some sympathy for him. Any of this could have been better than wasting the titles over the 50s Hot Rodders. I could easily say it doesn't feel like an Indiana Jones film, but I'll go further and say it doesn't feel like a film. It feels small, like it's a TV movie. It's almost like when MacGyver went off the air and they did these subpar adventure movies of the week. They have the original players and think that's enough and just shoot something. The constant nods back to the original films don't help either. It only reminds us what a disappointing addition to the series we're watching. Instead of all the nostalgia and all the shoutouts to the previous films, they should have spent some energy concentrating on this one.
Indy, my friend.
There's really no epic feel to any of it. Now maybe this was caused by trying to keep the film as secret as possible from onlookers and they were forced to shoot in sound stages all the time. I don't know, but it looks cheaply made. Overall, it felt like the film was just going through the motions. If I were told Spielberg wasn't involved and this was directed by anyone else, I would have believed it. There were a few cool singular shots, mainly of Indy's hat and silhouette, but it didn't have any of the excitement that Spielberg's camera brought to the rest of the series. I wonder if anyone else believed in this story other than Lucas.
You know nuts. He's crazy.
It's hard to believe they waited for nearly 20 years until this script came along, read it, and said, yes, this is it. Or maybe they just went along with Lucas, figuring if they just didn't agree to his story, they would never get to make a fourth film?
I'm sorry, kid.
I really wanted to like this film, but I just didn't. It seems like a lot of people enjoyed it, and I'm glad they did. I wish I could go along with them, since I love Indiana Jones and would have loved to have seen another quality addition to the series. But I just thought this one was a mess. And I'm not looking forward to seeing Mutt Williams go off on his first adventure.